Alright, hi there. Okay, this is Ian, and I've taught English in China, Korea, and Taiwan. And this is going to be about public schools in Korea or private school in Korea, also called a hagwon. So if you're trying to decide, should I teach in a public school in Korea or teach in a private school in Korea, then this is for you. So public school environment. Okay, the environment in a public school is going to be more similar to a public school in your country. Environment in a private school is going to be, they can be pretty modern. They can be pretty nice. The class size is going to be like much smaller in a private school than it is in a public school. In a public school, they're going to be like 30 or more students usually in the class. Unless you work in an after-school program, those in a public school, those can be pretty sometimes lighter classes, smaller classes. So in a private school, the class size is usually just a few students, could be going up to 20 or more students. And private school, you're probably going to make more money in a private school, though probably not a big difference. Compared to a public school, public schools usually have like a set pay scale depending on if you have experience or if you're TEFL or TESL certified or if you're what kind of degree you have, something like that. If you got a master's degree or something like that. So, but it's pretty set and stuff like that. As far as like vacations and stuff, and you're not going to really get much. It depends on the public school, but from my understanding, most public schools, the one I worked for anyways, we didn't get any more vacation than did the private schools that I've worked in, either the hagwons, So it just depends. Some people, I guess, can get like, maybe as much as a few months of vacation, Depends on the school, So in the private schools, yeah, there's not usually vacation. You get like 10 days or 14 days or something like that. And private schools are like, they're businesses. They're for profit. So some of them, you might have heard some bad stories on the web about hagwons and stuff like that. And yeah, there's some, out there that are poorly run, or a lot of people that are, running them, they don't know anything about education, So, and in public schools, I think a lot of people have the illusion that public schools are necessarily a better experience than a private school, and I would say that that's not necessarily true. And that's based on, experience, my own experience. I personally had better experiences in a private school than I did in a public school. I mean, there were things I liked about the public school too, yet, there's no absolute. It's not like public school is better than a hagwon. I wouldn't believe any of that stuff you read online. That's just one person who had a bad experience, and so on. So it just depends on the school. Your co-teacher is going to make a big difference. In a public school, you're going to have a co-teacher, and for me, I really didn't get along with mine. So I think it's really important that you get along with your co-teacher to have a good experience. So some people say that your co-teacher can make or break your experience in Korea. And a little stretch there. In a private school, you don't usually have co-teachers. You usually just do your own thing. There'll be other teachers in the school, foreign teachers and Korean teachers, but usually you have a lot more autonomy and independence in how you teach. I personally enjoyed that. Now, if you're a first-time teacher, you might enjoy working with an assistant teacher more because you don't really have a clue on what you're doing and stuff like that. You could, might help to have an assistant teacher in a public school. So usually you share responsibilities, or you have some role in the classroom. Maybe you just do something specific in the classroom. In public schools, a lot of them will have screens, and some of the lesson will be like on the screen. On a big, whatever, video screen, computer screen thing in the class. I'm not sure if all of them have that or not. And the materials are pretty much the same in the public schools. Like one public school to the next, they're pretty much all working with the same materials. Whereas in a public school, it's going to vary a lot. The conditions really vary a lot from one school to another. There's no they're private, you know. So whereas public, it's just like it's the system. So in a public school, you're really in the system. So in a public school, you know, there's not so much a system. You know, they're operating independently, and yeah. So you're an assistant teacher in the public school. So which basically means you're working under your co-teacher. So that's why it's important to get along with your co-teacher, or why that relationship's important. You know, you make more in a private school than you would in a public school. Usually, in a private school, you know, it's just got a range. You know, from the average person will make maybe 2.1, but you can make 2.2, 2.3, or 2.4. I made 2.4 in one. I started at 2.3 and then went to 2.4. I like the private school. I mean, I like the public school because it's kind of cool, like the setting, like being in the regular school and seeing all the different kids and stuff like that. And you know, and some of the kids, you know, a lot of kids will go to these private schools, after schools, and those kids in the public school or some of the private schools, you're gonna get some of those kids that their English is really high, their level's really high, you know, because they get English classes in the public school, and they're going to a private school for more, you know, to study more English, and some of their English level is quite high. Whereas in the public school, you know, there's, you know, a mixture of students, and some of them, you know, they have no interest in English whatsoever. The same thing can happen too in a private school, you know, because the parents want them to go there. That's why they're there, not because they want to learn necessarily. Yeah, I remembered something else. The hours in a public school, most teachers, everybody pretty much works the same hours. Like, oh yeah, the hours, the work hours, the teaching hours, right? So, yeah, everybody pretty much works in a public school, works from like 8:30 until 4:30 or something like that, or 8:40 to 4:40, something like that. And there's like a break during lunchtime for like, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes and stuff. It's pretty cool. I used to go play soccer with the kids. And that was fun. Apparently I wasn't supposed to do that, but it was a good time. And then the teaching hours in a public school are less. You actually teach less hours usually. Most teachers teach around like 22 hours, something like that. So you get a lot of time. You know, I think that's kind of a drawback to teaching in a public school. You get a lot of time to sit around and do office work, you know, which, you know, could be staring at a computer. Or private school, they're more like, they're all different. They're like 2 to 9, or it could be 1 to 9, or 2 to 10, or 3 to 10, or 2 to 8, or something like that. Or some in the morning, there's morning ones like that are kindergarten in the morning. It could be like a 9 to 6. It could be like you teach kindergarten in the morning for 3 hours or 4 hours or something, and then in the afternoon you teach elementary school students. And these are usually the younger ones. And then the evening ones, after school classes, are like, you know, the ones I just said, 2 to 10, 3 to 10, 2 to 8, whatever. Those are like a mixture. You're teaching like elementary kids, maybe even a few kindergarten kids, or middle school kids, or high school kids, you know. So there's really a mix of classes and ages that you're teaching there. I taught in one, I really pretty much worked like, averaged around 27 hours a week. So in a private school, most teachers are going to be teaching like 30 hours a week. That's pretty standard. And then you might have some office hours, you know. So I always look for the easygoing job, because I don't want to spend all my time, you know, teaching, you know, or in school, or sitting around and doing stuff like that. So the one I had, the hagwon, the full-time, you know, year-long contract one I did in Korea was less. I probably really only averaged around 30 hours a week total, work and teaching. I did around maybe 26, 27. There's times of the year where maybe you'll have to teach more than other times. So I pretty much worked from like 3 to maybe 8:30 or something like that on the average, something like that. So that was a pretty decent one. That was probably a lighter work schedule one. The other lighter work schedule one's the after school program, which is in the public school. I'm not gonna go into that. I'll save that for another video. Yeah, it's just a lot of, the thing with the public school is just a lot of sitting around. That's what I didn't like about it. And basically the co-teacher. Those are two reasons why my experience, wasn't good with the, public school, and how I ended up I actually got fired from my job in a public school. It was like the first job I ever got fired from. But I couldn't stand my teacher. And there's an article on my blog about that. But I can't say that, it really depends on you, if you're a full-time teacher, or if you're like a beginning teacher, you'll do better you might do better in a public school, it just depends. So on what works for you, but that's pretty much most, the best of what I could think of right now as far as, making that decision. Your co-teacher is a big deal, so, and that's kind of a luck of the draw. You can't really choose the co-teacher. It's just kind of what's given to you, and then how you deal with it. So, and everybody's role's different, like you may have I had 10 classes or something that I taught where my co-teacher didn't do anything, and for me that was great, and then there was, and I got to choose the books for those classes, and those were later afternoon classes, but the normal, regular, public school classes or day classes with, the regular books that they have. Their books, I think, the public school books kind of stink. They're not very good. Which is another bonus to working in a private school. Usually, I can't say usually, there's some private schools out there that have really poor books too, or they have books that are, that have grammar errors in it, or spelling errors and stuff like that. So then you got to deal with that. But it depends on the school, and I made another video about how to get a good job, and you can easily weed those out if you watch that video, how to get a good job.